thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a real pleasure and real honor to come here and talk to you. And you might have guessed from the name, but apart from my really important job of being a parent, one of the members of the audience here, I'm also the head of analysis at the Competition and Markets Authority. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through a little bit of thinking, which is basically my thinking, not the CMA's thinking, but it's a little bit of thinking of the kind that we do as regulators of competition in the GB economy. And the way it's going to work, I'll say a little bit about regulation, then I'll go into the notion of a well-functioning market, and there's going to be a game. You may have noticed these important props here, okay? When you do laboratory games, which is one of the popular things that's happened in economics, you're always told that it's really important to motivate the audience with incentives to do the best they possibly can. So here are your incentives. Remember it. So there's going to be a game that illustrates the well-functioning market. And the central question of the talk is going to be the markets that we see developing in the digital world, these nearly frictionless markets. Are they markets that are well-functioning in the sense that the game shows? And I'm going to talk a little bit about what these markets do, then we'll have another game. And the other game is going to be our same well-functioning market, except we're going to introduce Google. So Google stands for these platforms in digital markets, and there's going to be another prize available for whoever wins that game. And after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the potential issues that we see in digital markets, the question mark being, are they well functioning? And then finally, we're going to see, there's going to be at the end, if we have time, we're going to wrap up, there's going to be a special prize if we manage to beat the platforms in the digital market game. Okay, so first, little normal disclaimer. I work for the CMA, which is an important, august institution which produces official pronouncements. And today, I'm here speaking in my personal capacity on my soapbox, and it's got nothing to do with the official pronouncements of the Competition and Markets Authority. This is something one ends up having to say all the time at every talk in this job. The regulatory system in the UK, which I understand is part of your A-level curriculum. The way I think about it, lots of ways of thinking about it, the way I think about it is that here we have the UK economy. There are some clear problem cases in the UK economy, some absolutely textbook problems of markets that don't work. Natural monopolies, the obvious ones. So you have transmitting electricity from nice wind farms in north of Scotland down to where the demand is. You can't get competition to work. You need to regulate it. Water, more local, but still there aren't two pipes coming into the home. You can't get competition going. Telecoms, more or less, mostly still the same. So you get sector regulators for very specific problems in markets which are basically unfixable. And then you have the Competition and Markets Authority, which stands on top and says, okay, what about the rest of the economy? Is competition working for the general good, for the public good, in those sectors of the economy? And basically, we keep an eye on mergers, firms trying to get together to exert market power, dominance illegal agreements, another way of getting together. And then we have this really nice regime, which is specific to the UK, which is market inquiries and market studies. And these allow you to look at a whole sector, say, is competition working in the public interest here? If it's working properly, if it's a well-functioning market, all fine. If it's not, we have quite extensive powers to fix things. And so we've looked at cement, a really exciting one. And then I was involved in looking at motor insurance, which I'll say a little bit more about. It was actually very interesting. And most recently, I've been involved in the energy market inquiry, which I think you'll be hearing about in the next 2 weeks or so, in terms of, it's quite a big set of results coming out, and so you'll hear about that soon. Okay, that's the regulatory regime. What I'm now going to talk about is definitely down here, and it's definitely just the kind of thinking that we do when we look at the economy and particular bits of it. Is the market functioning well? I'm going to start off with this notion of a well-functioning market. This is a picture of a market close to my hometown in Annecy in the French Alps, and it's kind of the epitome. It's the absolute epitome may be the wrong word, acme, I don't know, the summum of a well-functioning market, okay? You walk up and down the street, there are various vegetable stall holders, you can observe the quality of the goods, you can see the prices, you may have formed a relationship with Madame Dutron here, and essentially things are pretty transparent, it's pretty clear, no one's making out like bandits, and I'm not particularly worried about transacting. So it's the kind of textbook simple market. If you look at the etymology of our etymology in English, it reflects that notion of the well-functioning market. Just down the road, I'm not sure if I got my bearings right, that way is Cheapside, right? So cheap in Anglo-Saxon is a bargain, it's a small trader, and Cheapside was the market of Anglo-Saxon London. And I went down there to try and get a photograph of something like that market in Annecy, but actually it's not that kind of market anymore. But this is it, the late 19th century, more or less still true to its word of Cheapside. This is it 80 years ago, transforming a little bit, maybe this guy's in the city, but anyway, a little bit of the same sort of market going on. That's the well-functioning market, the simple thing, as reflected in the notion of Cheapside. There's a different sort of market that's been around for a long time. And one of my favourite guys, Anacharsis, he was the first foreigner to be given citizenship in Athens. He came from Crimea, and around 550 BC, and he was known for his wit. And one of the things that he said was, a marketplace is an area set apart for men to deceive each other. Now, if that's what your market is, if you don't know what's going on, then people hesitate to trade there. You don't get all the social benefit that markets usually bring. This is not a well-functioning market. And I don't know if any of you know this film, House of Games by David Mamet. It's a really wonderful representation of what goes wrong when you have to second guess absolutely everything that everyone is doing. So the basic, having set up this dichotomy between the good market and the bad market, the basic question of this talk is going to be, so all these digital markets that we see, GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and the new so-called sharing ones, Airbnb, Uber, and the UK's real contribution to the web of these price comparison sites like Money Supermarket. I can't remember what that one is. All these markets, which are they? Are they like the nice homely market in Annecy, or is it more like House of Games? Now, in order to fix the idea of a well-functioning market, we're going to play the first of the games with this huge prize available, Dairy Milk Giant Buttons, okay, for the winner. So, what do you need to know about this? Okay, the building where we work, Victoria House in Holborn, has got a bowling alley down in the basement. And there's another bowling alley that's across the way, still haven't got my bearings in this place, that way in Brick Lane. And a long time ago, when I had a 12-year-old daughter, I used to have to organise birthday parties, and one of the places for birthday parties was bowling alleys. So put yourself in the position of a parent organising a birthday party for 10 children. And they're phoning around to see which bowling alley shall I go to. Shall I go to the one to All-Star in Holborn, or shall I go to Brick Lane? And as the owner of the bowling alley, so you're the parent choosing, but we're going to play the position of the owner of the bowling alley. As the owner, you know that each extra person in a party costs you £2, and that's a real £2 it costs you. It's a cash cost for you. It's a variable cost of £2 that it costs you. You also know from bitter experience that if you put your price above 15, parents say, nah, it's too expensive, going to take them to the cinema. So there's no point in going above 15. And you also know that if you're much more expensive than your competitor across town, then you really suffer in terms of the number of customers. Okay, so that's all you really have to know about the conditions that you face and your environment. Okay, so the way this is going to work, firstly, our starting point. Let's say that we start. I said no point in bidding above 15 and pricing above 15 per person, because then they go away. So we're going to start off at the monopoly level, as if we were monopolists, these two. We're just going to price at the maximum, and we're each going to get 20 customers, 40 customers in all, and we're making handsome profits. Okay, now, what I'm going to do is alternately, the left-hand side of the room and the right-hand side of the room, you'll still all stars each side, but you're doing one day, then the next day, one day, then the next day. And what you have to tell me is what your price is going to be. Okay, now I'm going to be Brick Lane, I'm going to be responding to your price, I'm trying to get some customers, make a profit. We're at a cozy, lovely place at our monopoly price of 15, so left-hand side, yours to start. Where would you like to price next? If you don't do it in 10 seconds, I will assume that your previous period price holds. Any? 14, I heard 14. 14, interesting price. You did 14, I'm going to respond with 10. What does that do? That's sufficiently low for me to get the whole market. Okay, my profit has gone up to 320, you got no customers at all at 14, because I really competed with you. What are you going to do on this side as a response to 14? To my 10. 10, okay, so you're responding to the competition by bringing the price down, which seems pretty sensible to me, but I'm chasing you down. I go to 8. What happens? Your profit has gone up to 80. It happens to be that my best response, I reckon, is 180. Of course, our profit's gone down. It's a real pity for us, but nevertheless, I've chased you down further than 10. What are you going to do on this side? 7? 7. Did I hear 7? Okay, at 7, we're getting close, okay, but I'm going to 6.5. What's happened here? We're almost dividing the market because our prices are not very different. I'm slightly undercutting you, so I get less per customer, but I get more customers, and that happens to be good, so I'm at 101, you're at 88, but you've definitely done better than last time. So that's not bad. What are you going to do on this side? 5! 5, you're really chasing the profit. Now 5, look, I've decided that 5's a bit too low for me. I go to 5.5. What's happened? I've sacrificed some customers, so you're getting more customers than me, but I've decided, so we've swapped actually, the 18 and 23, we've swapped around, but nevertheless, I'm getting 50p more per customer, and that's my best response, although you're making more profit. Do you want to do anything to the 5? Are you going to move at all? Hey, look, we were at 88. You're now at 68. Come on. You really going to stick to 5? 6. I've heard 6. Okay, let's go for a 6. Okay, now 6. My best response is a 6. We basically split the market. We make 80. Now, what's happened in this game? We started off at the monopoly level. We competed. It was painful for us, but we competed. And we got down to a price of 6. Now note that our variable cost is 2, but we ended up at a price of 6, basically no real reason to move. We're making some profit. That means that our fixed costs are covered, or we hope we can pay our rent with it, we can pay our tax, etc. We might even have a little bit of money left over to do some innovation, to do some investment, etc. So basically, this is a well-functioning market. It's not a perfect market. It's not your model of perfect competition in which even a tiny little cut is going to give you the whole market. That's not how this market worked. But nevertheless, it's working pretty well. So keep that intuition of the well-functioning market in your mind as we go on to think about what's happening in the GAFA markets. Now, one thing I should have said was the real reason for doing bowling alleys was not fond memories of organising birthday parties, and it wasn't because there's a bowling alley down in the basement of where we work, and it wasn't because actually we looked at a bowling alleys merger, believe it or not, because they're very local markets, so we had to examine that merger a few months ago, but it was really for the pleasure of being able to use illustrations from The Big Lebowski and I hope if you haven't seen it, that you will watch it. It's a wonderful film about competition and bowling alleys, and in particular, the importance of getting competition right in this kind of homely way. So there's the Big Lebowski. We'll return to the Big Lebowski when we do the next version of the game. So the question we're on is, are the digital markets we're looking at, are the digital platforms, do they behave like this in this well-functioning way? And my answer to you is going to be, it's complicated. The first question we have to ask about any market, really simple in the case of bowling alleys and parties, is what are they actually supplying? What's the value that they're bringing? And for these digital markets, almost always, the money that they're making is from what's called lead generation. Now, lead generation, let me take a little moment to tell you about lead generation. This is another David Mamet film. I use a lot of David Mamet films. I think that David Mamet, if he hadn't been one of the best playwrights of the last 40 years, could have been quite a good economist, because he tends to zoom in on these tiny little pieces of transactions and sees all the drama in them. It's really fantastic. So this is Glengarry Glen Ross, which is a film about sales. It's a wonderful film about sales. He also did, on the economics theme, he did American Buffalo, which is a beautiful film about dollars, about a dollar bill. But that aside, what Glengarry Glen Ross is about, the central theme element is leads. What happens with leads are the bit of customer attention, the first bit of customers noticing you, arousing their interest. So this is the Alec Baldwin character in Glengarry Glen Ross. Comes in, he's the motivational sales guy, he's the big shot sales guy, he's been really successful, and he's full of sales mantras. He's training these guys who are a bit past it in terms of sales. And one of his mantras is this one, AIDA, attention, interest, decision, action. The process that you have to, any business has to go through to actually make a sale and get the money in. And what leads are, is they get the attention and the interest of customers. Okay? And then the sales process, decision and action. So almost all of these digital platforms, Amazon, Google, etc., you type in a search that's coming, you are coming to the attention of a company. And a company is therefore prepared to pay for that. So that's essentially what Google is supplying in the market. To you, it's supplying search and information and ease. What it's supplying in the market is leads. So that's the business that they're in. I have his other wonderful sales acronym is ABC. Try to say ABC, always be closing, because attention, interest, that's what the marketing department does. They do the ads, they get the leads, they do the bidding for the Google AdWords, they get you, that's marketing. Decision action, that's what the sales guy has to do, always be closing. This poor guy, the Jack Lemmon character, he's the one who can't close a sale anymore, and his desperate plea is the leads are weak. The problem's here. It's not that I can't do it. It's a bit like the old man and the sea, the Hemingway of not being able to catch a fish anymore. It's an absolute tragedy. That's what lead generation is about, and that's what these digital platforms have completely transformed, is lead generation. So you can think of it this way. I'm now going to switch to mainly talking about Google, but I think the same story applies to most of the digital platforms. You think of the world here, and the world differently colored for different states of desire. There are people in blue state of desire, people in green state of desire, people in pink state of desire. And they announce to Google what the state of their desire is by typing in, I want to book a holiday to Turkey. And then you have firms over here who've got filling bottles full of different stuff which satisfies different states of desire. So you have firms supplying pink state of desires who are looking for people who are in a pink state of desire. Now, Google gets the information about your state of desire, and it then auctions off the words in the search to the firms. So the firm that is supplying the pink state of desire wants to buy the words holiday in Istanbul, for example. That's what lead generation does. That's what the digital platforms do, and they're solving this problem of matching buyers and sellers. What's complicated in this market for lead generation? I'm going to tell it to you through the story of a lunch that I had. I and my chief economist and my chief executive were taken out to very plush lunch by the person with the wonderful moniker of Hal at Google.com. So I don't know, again, whether you've seen it. There's a wonderful film, 2001, Space Odyssey, by Stanley Kubrick, in which Hal figures very strongly. You probably haven't seen it, but Hal is a computer. And Hal at Google.com is not a Google joke. It's not something from Google AI. Hal at Google.com is a real person, and this is what Hal looks like in 2001. Hal at Google.com is this guy, Hal Varian, and he's a well-known economist. He's also the chief economist at Google. He wrote a book about the digital economy. It was very influential, called Information Rules. But most, if you go on to do undergraduate microeconomics, you'll also be confronted with this piece of work, which is Intermediate Microeconomics, completely misnamed. It's a phenomenally dense and difficult book, and he turns apparently simple things into fantastic, beautifully complicated models, which, by the way, is more or less what economics is about, to take the very simple, to take it apart, try and understand what's really going on there. So anyway, he's the bane of many microeconomists' lives for having produced this good but extremely dense, complicated textbook. So Hal took us to lunch, and towards as we got to pudding, Alex, my chief executive, said, "Okay, Hal, you're sitting on all this data. You know what the problem of a competition authority trying to figure out whether markets are working well or not is. Tell us, how could you help us with your data?" Well, his first pitch was to say, "Hey, I've got a new survey tool that I could sell to you." We declined. We weren't buying at that point, but nevertheless, he was engaged in the conversation, and so I tried a different tack on him. And this is the tack that I tried. Okay, think back to this idea of lead generation. What we as a competition authority are interested in, we're interested in the degree of competition in markets, and that's what's going on the x-axis here. We've got monopolies over here. We've got very competitive firms over here. We have oligopolies over here. Oligopoly, by the way, is more or less the bowling alley case that we looked at earlier. Now, think of it if you're a monopoly. Think you're a water company, for example, supplying water into the home. How much are you going to bid for the Google AdWord that says, "How do I get water into my home?" Well, actually, anyone who wants water, and everyone does, is going to know that there's one place you go for water. It's your local water company. So I don't think they're going to bid very much. So if you're a monopoly, Google's revenue is going to be pretty low on those search terms. And if you're really competitive, was my pitch to Hal, you're not making any money. Think of the person in the street in Annecy, not making any money. You're not going to be able to afford any search terms. There's no profits here. So Google revenue is going to be very low. However, if you're in the middle, if you're in the bowling alley case, well, actually, each customer is worth quite a lot to me, so I'm prepared to pay something to get an extra customer. So Google revenues are going to tend to be high in oligopolies. Now, armed with this information was my proposition to Hal. Well, you could give us your revenues. We would be able to very quickly see whether a sector was monopolized or competitive. If it was monopolized, we'd say, okay, is it properly regulated or not? Why is it monopolized? We'd have a very nice way of selecting them. And then we'd have the oligopolies. We'd identify oligopolies and we'd say, is this a good oligopoly? Are they making profits because of their fixed costs? Are they making profits and reinvesting them? Are they innovating? Is it the kind of oligopoly that we like, as in the case of the bowling alley? Or is it an oligopoly actually that's got some barriers where actually they're getting lazy, they're not competing, and they're not providing good service? So that was my pitch to Hal. And indeed, if you go and have a look at where Google makes its money, it makes its money from, this is US data, by the way, insurance, loans, mortgages, attorney. There's actually a lawyer as well, so I always tell my lawyer colleagues that attorney plus lawyer is really quite a big chunk, and it looks as if it's quite a nice, lucrative market there for Google. So these are Google's big markets, right? And actually, for us at the Competition Markets Authority, these are the markets which we know need investigating. We've investigated a lot of them, etc. So at least on the face of it, it seemed to me that my proposition to Hal was not outlandish. Hal's response was, it's more complicated than that. Which of course made my heart sink, having remembered the complications of his textbook. But nevertheless, I thought, okay, let's investigate a little bit more. Let's think a little bit more about what those complexities are. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the bowling alley game, and we're going to do bowling alley plus Google bid game. So I don't know if any of you have seen The Big Lebowski, but in The Big Lebowski, there's a moment when they have to, instead of playing against each other amongst themselves, there's an outside team that comes in. The outside team are these guys. They're called the nihilists in the film, and they have to be really good. You know, you have to really concentrate hard to beat the nihilists. So we now have the same game we played earlier. We have the outside guy, which is Google, for whom we're bidding on search terms, and we're going to have to be very good. Okay, so let's go to the Google game. The Google game is essentially the same as the last game we played. We still set prices, but what you're going to have to do, as well as giving me a price, you're going to have to tell me how much you bid in the Google auction for London bowling alleys. And now have this in mind about your customers. Parents organising a party, sitting at their computers, typing into Google, London bowling alleys, cheap London bowling alleys even. And if you get to the top of the list, then you get the customer. That's my basic model. It's a very simple model, but I think it'll illustrate quite a powerful point. So if you get to the top of the Google list, you'll get the customer, because actually the parents think that Google's pretty good and they can't be bothered to do much else. So let's take that as the working model. Everything else is the same, except that you're paying Google per customer. You actually pay Google per click, but that's a detail, I think. So you're going to still have your £2 of variable cost. You're going to have the cost that you charge to Google, and then you're going to have the price and the revenue, as before. Okay, on the left hand, let's start it off. We got to the Nash equilibrium at 6.6. Actually, 7.7 I think is also Nash equilibrium, or is the Nash equilibrium. We got very close. So let's start off where we were before, but we now introduce bidding on Google Ads. So left hand started last time. Right hand side. If you give me a price and a bid in the Google auction, and you have 10 more seconds. 8 and 1. Okay, so I can see the logic of that. I think what you're doing is you're saying to yourself, I better get a few customers through my Google, but it's costing me something, so I'm going to hike the price. I like the logic. Now I'm going to match you on price, because I don't want to appear like I'm profiteering or anything, but I'm going to outbid you on Google, okay? Now look guys, I'm sorry, but I outbid you on Google. I got to the top of the list, I got all the click-throughs. That's 40 customers for me, 0 for you. I'm making a nice little profit there. Google's making a little bit, but I'm sorry, you didn't get any customers. What are you going to do on this side? So, okay, I like prices going up. Go on. £2. Okay, I see the logic of what you're doing. I certainly like prices going up. I always, I'm in this business too. But I'm going to outbid you on Google. I'm just going to go to 2.1, I'm afraid. So guys, I'm sorry. I'm outbidding you on Google. What are you going to do on this side? Do I hear 15 and 5? Now, it's music to my ears to hear 15. You've bid 5. Google likes that, certainly. Now, I'm going to match you at 15. There's no point in, competing too hard, but I'm going to bid in at 5.1. Now, guys, what's happening here? I'm getting all the customers. I'm sorry. I outbid you at Google. Google's loving this game, but my profits are still pretty healthy, certainly much healthier than they were at the Nash equilibrium of the last game. What are you going to do on this side? Are you getting fed up with not having any customers? Yeah, you can't go back. Remember, at 15, no customers. They go to the cinema. So, what am I hearing? So, you're getting more than your 10 seconds, I'm afraid. 15 and 11. Google is loving you. I'm going to match you at 15. But look, you're bidding 11. I'm going to bid 11.1 because if I don't bid 11.1, I get no customers if I don't outbid you. Or if I don't bid more, if I bid more than you, I get all the customers. I'm still making a profit. My profit's really going down. Google's loving it. Any more? On this side, what are you going to do? Ooh, 15 and 14.9. Now, I think at this point we need to bring in another person in the game, which is your bank manager, because at 15, I don't bid anything, because at 15 and 14.9, remember, you've got £2 of variable costs on each of those customers. You've certainly got all the customers you were fed up with not having any, but you're losing money on every single one of them. Okay, what are you going to do to repair things before your bank manager gets really fed up? 15 and 13. Okay, so 15 and 13. What do I say to myself? I say to myself, well, 15, I don't want to go to 13.1 because I'll get the customers but I'll lose, so I better do 15 and 13 as well. What happens? Identical bids, we split the market. But look at our profits. We make no profits. Why do we make no profits? Because essentially we bid all the way up. All the money we were making from customers, we've handed it over to Google in order to get the customers. Okay, what's happened in this market? We started off at what we thought was quite a well-functioning Nash equilibrium. We edged our way around, and we got to a point where we're still in the market. The price is back at the monopoly level, the level that we started at in the last game, and Google's the one that's picking up all the profit. Okay, so I just want to say, this is an example of the kind of thing that one does as a microeconomist, which is you look at a phenomenon, and then you kind of exaggerate the hell out of it. You just say, okay, let's take it to the absolute extreme, let's strip it down to everything. There's lots more complicated things actually going on in this market, but let's try and identify one of the forces at work here. And I think this is quite a powerful force, by the way, because think about this from the point of view of the parent searching. The parent's just typing stuff in. The parent doesn't see that the price is at the monopoly level because the prices are all the same in the market. That's also what you'd see in a competitive market. The parent doesn't know where the profits are going. The parent just knows, oh, there are several bowling alleys, looks okay. Okay, so I think that there's a very powerful effect at work here. I've stripped out a lot of complexity, but nevertheless, this is very typical of the methodology of microeconomics. You pick a phenomenon, you try and build a model, and you see where it takes you. Now, I just want to say, come on, how are we going to solve this problem? It's true that our customers like to see us up at the top. So let's put our Google bids at 0.5. And what should we do with prices? I think we can definitely do business. Now, what's happened here? Okay, we've got back to monopoly prices. Or rather, we're still at monopoly prices. But we've taken the profits away from Google and we've allocated them to ourselves. Now, what we've done, deeply illegal. Okay? We formed a cartel. We formed a conspiracy against the public. We go to jail for it, but it's pretty tempting. The European Commission is looking at Google on anti-competition grounds, but the stuff that the European Commission is looking at is not at all the stuff that the problem in this market that I've just described. It's a whole lot of other stuff that it's looking at. So this has nothing to do with the EU's investigation into Google. So let's spend a tiny little bit of time just thinking about what actually, trying again, drill down to what actually went wrong in the market that we've just described. The way I like to think about it is that it's a bad agent problem. So an agent is someone who does something on your behalf. So you're the customer, and you say, look, really, I want you to find me a bowling alley. That's you treating Google as an agent. And the bad agent says, oh, I have a customer. I'm going to go to the bowling alley and I'm going to get them to pay for that customer. And the amount that they pay for that customer is going to be in the price that is charged to the customer. But me, I'm the agent. I'm just putting the two together, and if they're happy, I'm great. And anyway, I pick up my fee. So this is what's happening here. You have the client, you have the agent, you have the manufacturer, the bowling alley, and the agent is a cost factor into the manufacturer. And out of that comes the price. This is the structure that has given rise to the problem that we saw. And it reminds me of a quote that Peter Drucker, the really great management theorist, came up with in the 1980s when he was always ahead of his time, interested in how these retail markets really worked. He said, the purpose of every business is to create a customer. It's really interesting that, because you might have thought, oh, the purpose of business is to supply bowling services. Yeah, you can supply bowling services, but if you don't have a customer, you're not in the bowling alley business. You may be in the bowling alley art, but you're not in the bowling alley business. The purpose of every if you don't have a business until you have a customer, and if you've outsourced getting your customers to a single agent, and that agent's a bad agent, you've got a real problem. So that's the kind of thing that's going wrong here. Let me talk to you just very briefly about this page. Motor insurance is one of the really big earners for online commerce, because you have to renew your motor insurance every year. So lots of people go to Google, type motor insurance, and this is what they get. They get at the top of the list, compare motor insurance, which actually is Money Supermarket, though you might think that it sounds a little bit like another one of the comparison websites. Then down here, at least at the moment, I think this may be changing, you get this nice piece of real estate here, which is Google's own comparison site for motor insurance products. And then down here, you get Money Supermarket again. Now, these are all paid links. This one may not, I can't remember what this one is. Anyway, it's not, because it doesn't have the little ad. You see how easy it is to see. Is it paid, is it not? But anyway, this is probably one of the most valuable pieces of real estate in Britain. Okay, think of Google as doing this. Google essentially sort of magics up a high street for every single consumer, for every single desire they have. This is the motor insurance high street, and it is the rent collector for the real estate on that high street. So how does that go in terms of the story that I was telling? I was trying to propose to Hal, this nice inverse U-shape that might give us information. Well, actually what we found, if you're a monopolist, you're still not going to get caught in this Google game, because you don't need to compete with anyone for those customers. So that bit of the line is still true. But what we found was that actually Google can increase revenues to such a point that it essentially creates monopoly profits. In the simplified model that I gave, essentially creates monopoly profits in markets that previously were perfectly competitive, or reasonably competitive. So the question one might ask at this point is, well, come on, what's called? There's something odd is going on here. What happens in real life? What happens IRL to solve this problem? Take this example. I'm at the airport, I've gone through check-in, they've taken my water away at the security. I'm thirsty. So what I want to do is I want to find some water. My state of desire is water. And I get through beyond the trauma of security, and there are lots and lots of alternatives. Lots and lots of people platforms are trying to elicit my interest and attention for supplying me the water. There's this guy here, the water vending machine, and there's the seafood bar Caviar House. And I look at them and I assess them, and I think, obviously I'm going to go for the seafood bar Caviar House because it's obviously got better water, but I've made a real choice, it's really got my attention, it's got my interest. I've made a real choice between these two guys. Okay, this is not like Google, where I go to the motor insurance page and there's one place. Here there are two places. I've made my choice. I might have gone for the expensive one, but that's because it was worth it. So that's what happens IRL to solve the problem of having only one source of attention and interest. Now, what would it look like if the platforms were doing the same sort of thing as the vending machine and the caviar house are doing? Well, here we have Jeff Bezos, the founder and CEO of Amazon, and here we have Eric Schmidt. And what if they were doing that, what happens at IRL, they would be saying to themselves, what can I do to get the guys to come straight to me and my platform to do their buying instead of going to the other guy's platform? Maybe I could offer them lower prices. Maybe if they came to Amazon to buy motor insurance, I could say, it's going to be cheaper here. Or I could even say, come to Amazon, I am the caviar house of motor insurance, the better one-click buy button, and that's why you're going to pay more. But anyway, they would be saying, come here because of some intrinsic quality in the way in which I'm selling this to you. Now, actually what they're doing is something very, very different. This is one of my favorite stories. This is Amazon Dash. Wait for it to arrive in your lives. Amazon Dash is Amazon's foray into the Internet of Things. The way it works is going to be this. You order your muesli off Amazon. You get, with your muesli comes a Dash button the first time you order it. And the Dash button you stick in the cupboard next to the muesli. When the muesli runs out, you press the Dash button. Okay? And it goes straight to order on Amazon your muesli, and it delivers it by drone. Okay, I'm not sure about the last bit, but that's the Bezos dream. Okay, that's the ultimate. It's the ultimate of what I think of not as being the Internet of Things, but the shopification of the world. Okay, so in this shopification, what's happened to attention, interest, decision, action? Attention, that's the emptying of your muesli packet. But then between attention and action, there is no space. No one can get in once you've got the Dash button there. You just press the button. Okay? So nothing, there's no possibility of competition. No one is going to try and get or have a chance to get your interest or an alternative decision. So actually, what they're doing is they're all trying to get your attention somehow. They're all competing to do it. And they're all being kept honest by that. What's happening, I think, in these digital platforms is they're all thinking, how can I possibly get these guys never to think about choosing or searching again? Make it all so seamless that you never have to think again. So, Competition Markets Authority, back to regulation. I'm very proud of the fact, this is my chief executive, Alex. Alex had a speech last year in which he said, look, we're aware of these problems, and to the extent that the platforms have found limiting competition between themselves, Amazon versus eBay versus Google, now versus Uber, which is, arrives in your Google Maps search results as a transport option. To the extent that they're doing things which are limiting competition between those platforms, we're going to be very, very attentive to that. And just to finish up, I just want to leave you with an image. This is, I think, something that's coming up in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's going to take some time. You guys you don't know a world before Amazon and Google. Before Uber, yes, but not before Amazon and Google. Okay, so we're all heading into the future. Very unevenly distributed future, but we're heading into the future. And we're coming up, I think, to a path, a crossing in the path. On the one hand, we have the sunlit uplands. We have a whole lot of robots. Going to AI, we're going to robots. But the robots are being kept honest. They're being kept honest because they're competing against each other. Okay, so the robots are not taking all the choice away from us. We've managed to get the robots to compete, the Dash buttons against eBay's equivalent, against Google's equivalent. We've got them to continue to compete. And that's great, because what does it mean? It means that we can get on with the really important stuff in life. We can watch David Mamet films. We can go bowling. The only point at which we meet the nihilists is when they come and beat us in the bowling competitions. We can solve climate change. We can do the important stuff, and we can get the robots to look after the really dull stuff, but they have to be competing robots. That's one vision, the sunlit uplands. But the other vision, Alex in his speech coined this thing, Bingelson. Bing, Google, Amazon, eBay, it all becomes one thing in our minds. And that leads to, this is the cover picture from a novel by David Eggers, The Circle. Really terrible, I mean, wonderful book, but terrible vision he has, dystopian novel, of what happens when market power runs out of control in these platform spaces. And I think that the thing to think about here is we talked about bowling alleys, prices being too high, etc. But actually, when you get concentrations of market power, and this is what David Eggers gets absolutely right, when you get really massive concentrations of market power like this, it's not just bad in terms of our incomes and how far does our pound stretch, but it's actually really bad for society because you get huge disparities of real power that comes out of the market power. So that's the point in the road that I think we're coming up to, or that you certainly will have to face over the next 40, 50 years. And competition, regulation, and having some kind of way of analysing these phenomena and what's happening is going to be phenomenally important over that period. So I'm glad to say that we won the important prize, which was fixing the problem, but possibly at the risk of at the risk of jail. I'm not sure it was completely worth it. and then because we've run out of time, you're going to have to divide these amongst yourselves without regard to the incentives that were in the game. Thank you very much.